while I'm swaying here, and I know boots on the ground is not it was popular, so popular no one might hear about it, but in my head it is actually playing. No worries, no worries.
Oh my gosh.
Check YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not live.
Can you just record?
Yeah. And it says recording. You know what? Let's see if this'll do it and go from there. Okay. Thank you so much for bearing with us as we've had technical challenges, and sometimes you have to pivot and sometimes you have to pivot multiple times. But nonetheless, we are rolling with this recording. Was hoping to go live. We're not able to go live, but thank you so much for tuning in anyways. So my name is Kishen, and thank you so much for joining Stories with Kishen, Ordinary People with Extraordinary Lives. And I am so excited to be before you because in light of some of the changes and um, changes in law, policy, or what have you, as it relates to healthcare, Medicaid, and so on and so forth, it's important to talk about those conversations because at some point, somebody's going to be impacted, whether it's positively or adversely. So, we're going to talk about infant health. And I have with me, joining me today, award winning and founder of BirthWise Doulas Services, Toni Curtis, who has a long list of accolades and awards and just um, impact that she's made in the community and across the nation. So let's just get right into it, Toni. Thank you so much for braving the storm, if you will, with me all day and coaching me through this. Breathe, just breathe. You truly are just by nature a doula because clearly you saw the stress that I was having. But let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about infant health. Let's
Hmm.
talk about some of the challenges that you've identified just over your career, the past 20 plus years in this space, of what some of the challenges that you've seen for people who don't have all of the information, may not know what's happening in this whole process, and the impact that you have in this space of birthing as a doula.
Absolutely. So I like to kind of make it easier, right? Sometimes we look at everything way too big and we need to kind of focus in on what the point is. And so, two things I'm going to tell you: an everyday practice and the history behind it, and why the changes we see today are going to affect a lot more people than we realize because of the current situation, right? We got a
Okay.
compounding situation. But when you don't
Right.
know the history, you don't know the truth of how it works in regards to infant development, and then you have things being done in light of not taking into consideration the reason why we do certain things in the first place.
Okay. So
So,
let's break it down at the foundational level and then add those layers.
absolutely. My deepest apologies. I turned my phone back on. That was a mistake. Sorry.
All well, all is well.
Okay. So, think of it like this: when we're talking about infant health, we are talking about the overall development of a child till 5 years old, realistically. So we're
Okay.
talking about the gestational development. That means when mom is pregnant or the birthing person is pregnant, right? All the way through that first 5 years, because that's major developmental growth and brain activity. It in a lot of ways shapes the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are other influences throughout life, but these are the big ones, right? The first thing you have to know about infants is they're born not quite fully developed. For the very first 90 days, they're still like they are in the womb. They're not really acclimated to the outside world. And their brain
Really?
develop, oh yes. Yeah. No.
Okay.
It takes You ever heard them old sayings like you gonna spoil a baby? That's not a thing. They were meant to be held when they were in the womb. They were held all the time, right?
I
Okay, well,
agree.
first 90 days of their lives, they're expecting that same level of connection. One of the
Mm.
most frustrating things for new parents is that constant demand of someone who needs you all the time. But while you were pregnant, you were able to go about doing all of your normal activities while having your baby inside. There are techniques, and I'll just tell you this one real quick, like baby wearing. Why do we encourage baby wearing? Because it promotes bonding, but it also promotes brain activity.
What is
When you
it called?
baby wearing. We wear the baby. You ever seen videos of women where they have cloth and it's kind of tied to them and the baby is
Ah.
on them? That's the
Hmm.
original baby wearing. Then we have baby carriers, which those are for bigger babies, right? When you can hold your neck up. Baby wearing is definite. And then what happens when you learn how to baby wear, you actually acclimate and change according to the age of the child, right? Newborns, you wear them in a way where they're very close to your heart. And then when they get bigger, their heads are out. And when they get bigger than that, then they're probably on your back. Why? Because it actually allows you to do what you were doing when you were pregnant, which is continue with life. You're able to keep going.
Oh.
Your arms are free, and your baby is calm, just like they would be if you were still pregnant. But when has been taught to see infancy differently, you don't see the solution. You see it as a problem, as something you have to do. But while you were pregnant, you never negotiated the thought.
Oh, wow. You know what? This is good because I think of young people where, and even I had a bassinet that I never used because I'm like, I'm not getting ready to get up throughout the night. You need to be with me. And people are like, no, you shouldn't have the baby sleep with you. I'm like, whatever.
Well, the sleeping, now our co sleepers hooked to the bed. They're right there. When you balance a co sleeper at the right height, it's right at the height of your bed. And so
Okay.
the baby has their safe sleeping space right next to you. But the
Okay.
reality is, your baby does need to be that close to you. But if you're a mom or you've given birth to a baby, it's like having bat hearing, right? Every little sound that baby makes, it wakes you up because you're being tuned to take care of your baby. So when we talk now, we're getting more into the development of being a mother or a parent,
Mhm.
right? I'm getting a little bit away from infancy, but just as a coping, understand how babies work. When you decide to have a baby, you decide to take care of someone 24/7.
Yeah.
Eventually, they grow and you're able to get a break. But the vast majority of parents go through this transition period of where they want to break from this 24/7 job. And it causes a lot of distress, which also is one of the things we talk about in infancy. Is called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And one of those is bonding,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh,
When
that's
we
good.
talk about bonding, we're talking also about the ability to cope with being a parent. Because if you can't cope, it's hard for you to teach and develop a child.
Ooh, that's good. Because I think sometimes they're separate. People try to separate being a parent with coping. Hmm. Let's continue to talk about that because we are talking about infant health. And if there is an inability to cope as a parent, then like you said, it does create adverse childhood experiences.
Absolutely. And those experiences stay, they stick. They they can define a person's motor skill development. And when we talk about various things related to autism, some of these things go hand in hand. Nutrition started in the womb. We start talking nutrition as soon as a mom is pregnant. That is probably one of the first time women go through so much screening about their nutrients. That's one of the first times women are being screened for anemia. And they're like, well, the baby needs it to grow and develop. Well, you needed it the whole time. Anemia
Yeah.
is related to mental health. So now you're pregnant, and now all of the things you didn't know about how to take care of yourself again from the beginning, that leads to the development of your child. So we go through this process, but then we have this crescendo. The baby is born, and we start
Right.
fighting for things like skin to skin. And we cannot, you have to understand that there's an adverse relationship to the science and what's natural, because someone is doing a job to get something done regardless of what is actually beneficial if you understand how it works in your benefit. So when we're saying no, put the baby skin to skin, we're talking about development. We're talking about brain chemistry for the baby, but we're also talking about brain chemistry for the mother. We're talking about
Mhm.
preventing or reducing hemorrhage risk. And then we're talking about stress levels in a baby. One of the things that our parents say and notice right away is that their skin to skin baby, their baby that's born and put directly on their skin at birth, is incredibly quiet compared to what they're accustomed to. They're looking for a screaming, crying baby. That doesn't mean the babies don't cry, they just don't cry very much. They cry
Mm.
to open their lungs, they cry with purpose. But that stress, when you take a baby off of a mom, if you know how to conduct skin to skin, you will know a baby that's been removed from their mom, period, or the birthing person. So
Wow.
that baby cries in a whole different way.
You said something that I think a lot of young mothers should hear and take
Mhm.
notice of. Babies cry with purpose.
Absolutely.
So I think sometimes, and I remember my children are adults now, but I remember the cry and I kept wondering what the problem was. I knew there was something, and because they can't speak yet, cry is a form of communication.
Hmm.
And it's not to let you know they're getting on your nerves, but that they're trying to communicate that something is wrong with them.
Yeah. But the most important thing that is usually wrong is not an actionable item. Babies require to be soothed, they require being secure. The interesting
Mm.
thing is, we can take situations that are less foundational to human nature and we will watch them in reverence, right? A lot of people
Like
can
what?
watch an animal give birth. They watch the baby bear walk right behind mom, right up, never mom. And you can hear the National Geographic narrative. The babies are right there with mom. We know mom is nearby. Mom is never far. But we turn around and we look at our own selves and we don't see that we have a direct relationship to bonding and connection to our children. But we'll watch it and say, oh, that's fascinating. Those animals are
Wow.
so unique. Are they? You, the hardest thing to realize as a parent is that in a lot of ways you don't get a full break from your children. Having a
Hmm.
child, especially a newborn, away from their mother puts the mother in a state of distress. So the care for team, like the postpartum doulas, we take care of the babies and the moms in close proximity to the mother. So the mother may not be doing some of the physical actions of taking care of the baby, but we also make sure that she gets taken care of.
Mm.
Why? Because if a mother or that person that is that 24/7 care provider can't cope, then we have to help them. And we don't just help the person, the mom that gave birth or the birthing person, we help the other parent too, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's affected, but this affects development.
Yeah.
When you can't cope, things happen, like parents break up
Mm.
because we don't understand the relationship. We don't understand. We live in a world where you get to opt out of what you have to do.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Opt out of what you have
Have
to do.
mhm. Somebody gonna come fix it. Well, some
Yeah.
things we can't come fix. We have to teach you how to do. You need a community of people who help you with these things. So when you're giving birth, if I was to tell you that this will decrease your chances of breast cancer and uterine cancer, and increases your chances of lactation and decreases your chances of having a fussy baby, right? Because the baby was put in a state of distress. This increases the likelihood that you and the baby have the mental capacity to bond with each other as well as cope with the environment. If I give you all that in skin to skin, you would take it. If I told you that this was protecting your life and the life of the baby, and it was in a pill, you would take the pill. But every day,
Mm.
you go in hospitals and they're like, can we put a cloth between you and the baby? We need to dry the baby off. Well, the baby has antimicrobial vernix all over them. They're like, well, it's going to make the baby cold. How? When skin to skin is the best way to heat the body. If you're hypothermic, you can't even be wrapped in blankets. You need the best way to deal with hypothermia is to be skin to skin with another human being. There is no
So
better conductor.
let's go back because you use terminology. I want to break it down.
Okay.
The micro, what is it?
Oh, microbiome. So the
Because you said,
antimicrobial barrier is called
so what
vernix.
is that? What is
That's that
that?
white stuff you see all over the baby. And everybody's like, get the white
Ah,
stuff off the baby. Yeah, it's called vernix. It's
see,
to
and
protect.
I used to think just that. I'm like, okay, they need to clean this off. So are you suggesting that that is actually a protective layer?
It is. It literally is. It's a
Oh,
defense on the baby's skin from being born into this world. Later, you will clean your baby,
interesting.
but not wipe all the vernix off the minute the baby's born, right? The goal is we have to dry the baby off to make the baby warm. This is the logic, right? When
Mm-hmm.
realistically, we're putting a baby on the skin. So the
Mm-hmm.
coldest state possible, hypothermia. Let's say you had hypothermia and you needed to warm up. Putting another person skin to skin with you is the best way to recover from hypothermia over blankets.
Mm.
Hypothermia and skin
Okay.
is unlikely to save your life. Now, I'm giving you an extreme. Babies are no different. Babies are meant to be with the parent, with the mother, with the person who gave birth. And it regulates their temperature, and then you can go to the other parent, but it needs to be done for 1 hour right after baby is born foundationally. Babies
Oh my
come online, they
goodness.
go through what we call 9 stages of awakening. They transition into this world from being born. And at the same time, there are huge hormonal changes inside of the mother who just gave birth or the birthing person that also have these hormonal changes. But the way you cope with them that's built into the body, the physiological, is to put the baby skin to skin and let them
Got it.
go through this together. You get better outcomes. That's how the body.
Interesting. This is deep. See, I wish I could go back. If I could go all the way back to the beginning and have this information, I would have done a lot of things differently.
Absolutely.
But I understand the system was designed in a way that, and I'll just say this, I don't know if this is right or not, but this is how I interpret it. Because I always go back to Henry Ford. It's like a production assembly line. Okay, this, and this for efficiency, but not necessarily for the purpose of what's best for that child. Because some things you cannot uh, put through an assembly line. It has to just allow itself to happen, whatever that is.
Hmm. So, what you're talking about as far as like a hospital relationship, it's called continuity or standard of care, so that everyone is receiving the same standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which sometimes may or may not align with all of the parts of science, because in order for them to do their job to make sure that they are keeping your baby healthy, they created a standard of care, which is a checklist of things they need to do to make sure that the baby is okay. Now, these things can oftentimes be done right there while the baby's with you. But
Mm-hmm.
it is a hard push to say, hey, just put the baby directly on the skin. Well, you don't want us to wipe the baby off first? We don't. We don't.
Mm.
We want you to put the blankets on the baby, cover the baby, slide a diaper underneath the baby, all right there on the chest. Leave mom and baby together and let them transition together, right? So I, as a provider, let's say I'm gonna being a provider, I need to make sure all these things are done because we want to make sure there's nothing wrong with your baby. So we
Right.
have a single focus when there's a big picture.
Okay.
We need to do that and what's natural and necessary for there to not be something wrong.
So
Checking
you're
to see if
speaking
something.
the difference between being a doula
Mm,
and what typically happens in the hospital with a doula not there.
absolutely.
Okay, okay. I'm tracking with you. This is good though, because I have one granddaughter. So I have other grandchildren at some point that will be coming, but it's good to know now, you
Mhm.
know, why it's so important because sometimes we can overlook that and let's just keep going. Sorry, but I'm just trying
Well,
to make it all make
if
sense.
there's another grandbaby being born, I know you're gonna call me. I know I'm gonna be there.
Look, I ain't playing. I've been telling them all too. I'm like, you know what? Y'all need to consider this. And we have a close relationship here. So you want to make sure that you put yourself in a position and your child, my grandchild, so that you know you're doing what's best. And not just because somebody told you something, but understand the reasons why. People don't always understand the reason why. And well, this is what they said, but wait a minute. Do you know why this is important?
Why it's important. And I'm talking at a very easy for anyone to do level, right?
Yeah.
We can get into all the variations. We know that from those of us that are practitioners and many of us that have gone through a ton of training and development, infant development, childhood development. Those of us who have gone through medical training, we know what's called like the social determinants of health. We understand chronic health conditions, and so there is an undertone to a lot of this. So being
Mm-hmm.
able to bond and cope and do this first skill likely leads to the ability to breastfeed. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is that when that happens, we're decreasing those things that we call social determinants of health. Because when you breastfeed, you are more likely to have a healthier child, better mental development, better motor skill development, activate those hemispheres of the brain. The brain is two-sided, right? So when we're doing those things, those are developmental cues that you're doing without ever knowing you're doing it for the benefit and the growth of your child. And we're not
Wow.
saying that when you don't do them, it's all adverse. That's the thing about development of small children. You won't know until they're adults. You won't know until you have someone who has emotionality that can be regulated. You won't
Mm.
know until someone shows signs of autism years later. You won't know until motor skill development is delayed. You won't know until something is wrong. And if, for all intents and purposes, it's the best possible outcome where whatever is wrong doesn't present itself, then you won't know till later, or you might be gone. You might not know until your child is 40 and has type 2 diabetes and you don't know why, or your child is struggling with obesity but now they're adults and you don't know that it came from overfeeding and using an imperfect food in infancy. But see,
Mm.
this is the thing about accountability. We as human beings and adults at some point we do believe in signing off on responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when the educators who are coming in like me, who are really teaching what physiological means to the human body, we are talking about what benefits you for life. I teach a lifespan model
So
because
uh, what you're saying is preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance. And again, I just go back to work analogies because people understand work.
Mhm.
And especially if you've worked in a factory and you have to make sure that the machine is oiled, or even for a car, you need to make sure for the longevity of the car that you get the oil change, you get all the filters changed, you do all this other kind of stuff
Hmm.
so that it creates a good running car. And as it is with your body, and especially for women who carry the babies, all of that impacts what's happening in the long run. And it's not just exclusive to women, as we've
Hmm.
talked offline, but
Hmm.
the male has a role in that as well, which is a
Hmm.
whole nother story because we're talking about skin to skin right now.
Uh-huh.
But I just wanted to say that people don't always realize that there are long term effects
Right.
from what happens as an infant and before the infant is born that
Mhm.
may not come out until later.
Right.
This good.
Some people don't realize we're in what we call a maternal health crisis. And what does that mean? That we have rates higher than what is considered safe, or a parameter that we say, hey, we're doing a good job or a bad job in regards to um, perinatal and infant health, or maternal and infant health, right? Those rates are not any, they are not pretty. And we are, unfortunately, doing not the greatest job, considering that 80% of what's preventable, or what causes loss of life, is preventable. And for infants, that's loss of life in the first 6 months. Globally, the number one killer of infants in the first 6 months is sepsis, right? A bacteria that gets in the gut that eventually causes the demise of the baby, which is why diarrhea in infants is a big deal. A baby that
Mm,
has diarrhea should seek medical treatment, right? So some people don't know that,
yeah.
right? There is a term with infants, it's called failure to thrive. Failure to thrive is where a perfectly healthy, or a perfectly healthy presenting baby does not meet their milestones, especially in that first 6 months of life. So when we're talking about failure to thrive, there are caveats to this, right? You take something like Black people and babies that struggle. And when I say Black, we're talking about your anthropology. We're talking about your genetic makeup of descending from Africa. Sometimes we like to be a little bit divisive over this, but for the purposes of you understanding what is best for your child, we are talking about your genetic makeup. Okay.
Okay.
So you take something like failure to thrive, but you don't take into consideration how many of us have lactose intolerance. And when we say lactose intolerance, we're talking about the enzyme in milk not being able to be digestible by the body. This can be overconsumption of dairy while breastfeeding, as well as giving babies formula. They're still the enzyme is still being passed, so they're susceptible
Mm,
to it. With breastfeeding, they usually do a bit better. But even as a lactation counselor, because you do talk about, I am a doula, but I'm also a lactation counselor, and I'm a nutrition specialist, right? So when this happens, we have babies that are sicker than normal, and they're wondering why they're not absorbing nutrients. So for Black
mm.
infants, sometimes this can be called refeeding syndrome. It's a little bit rare, but it does happen. And until you realize and know that there are pediatric dietitians and didactic support specialists and lactation counselors that specialize in infant feeding, you don't know where to go. You don't realize that you can go to lactation counselors even when you're not lactating and say, hey, my baby is 4 months old and sick. And we've tried to feed them every kind of formula. We don't know what to do. We are infant feeding specialists. We
So,
specialize in feeding babies.
so what are some, when you say sick, what does that look like? I know you
A
mentioned
baby that's
diarrhea, but what?
up all the time, a baby that has diarrhea, a baby that's not gaining weight, a baby that can't be soothed no matter how you feed them, a baby that
Mm.
won't sleep. There's a thing with babies, especially infants, small infants, that when they get so frustrated from not eating, they do what's called shut down. It looks like they're going to sleep. No, they're just exhausted from trying.
Oh,
And they
wow.
will go to sleep briefly, but when they awake again, they're going to be quite upset and they're going to be quite up,
Ah,
but sometimes it's not that if you're a lactating mother, you couldn't breastfeed. Medications that you're taking may interfere with letdown or letting the milk out of the breast in order for you to breastfeed. This is why you
yeah.
need a lactation counselor when you're talking about infant feeding. They got to run through what's
Mm,
happening. We do measurements to see how well your baby is receiving nutrients,
mm.
as
This is
well.
good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So what we don't realize when we talk about people who specialize in it, when you talk about someone like me who does perinatal, or it depends on which term. Perinatal has to do with anything from having a child. Maternal
Mm,
is specific to a time frame, and then infant is specific to that time frame. So when we say perinatal, a lot of times we're referring to women or birthing people, um, which means that they're genetically have all of the female parts that can have children, and they have, or they may have complications from things related to, right? If you're doing other things, and I can explain that later, it affects hormones. Hormones affect your overall development. That's just the way that works. But before I'd love it. And we ain't. I ain't gonna. I'm gonna stay on these babies because I'm on babies today. Now we won't talk about something about other than babies. We'll talk about that on a different day, and we'll talk about how to keep you healthy. But you got to know what you're made of and know what you are in
yeah.
regards to how your body is made. How your body is made is how your body is made. That's just the way it is.
And again, I can only connect it to my experience as I these what sickness looks like. Won't sleep, not gaining weight, diarrhea, difficulty feeding, and different things like that. And I did not breastfeed because I was unaware of the benefits. And coming out with twins, I'm like, there is no way in the world I'm doing this by myself. Get up, get up. It's two of them. We tag teaming. But now that I see, you know, when you don't know much, you can't do much. But when you know, then you do better.
Right.
This is good information for people, young people, older people, because sometimes there's multi-generational homes.
Right.
And to be able to know what to look for, maybe somebody's watching or listening and they have their daughter or granddaughter living with them, and they can help in that process because now they have this information, so better, you do better. So as we wrap up this session, and of course we'll be back next week and we'll talk more about just some of the uh, infant health as it relates to policy, poverty, and early intervention, and go into detail a little bit more. What what are some final words that you would like to just share that would be beneficial for people in this space, or who could impact?
As we discuss development, especially in infancy, I want people to understand I'm not saying that this is all about you being a person who breastfeeds. You release the bonding hormone oxytocin whenever you put your baby on your skin, whether you breastfeed or not. Oxytocin also comes out when you are breastfeeding. But there are multiple ways to bond with a child.
So what's the
Bonding,
important oxytocin?
oxytocin is the hormone that bonds you together. So think of it like this. You ever when they did the study of skin to skin, what they found is when they put the babies directly with the mothers, they were less likely to abandon those children at birth. They kept the baby and the mom together. Those mothers were less likely to abandon their children, even in an adverse situation. This is important for us to understand in regards to even capacity and ability to care for a child. It helps you transition into wanting to do, as well
Mm,
as we just assume that because you had a baby, you're going to immediately fall in love and want to take care of your baby. But obviously, this is not always the case. But
Yeah.
the things that help you with that, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, happens when you are in contact with the child. So when we're talking about properly bonding, we're talking about development. Not we're talking about the development of the child.
Yeah.
Children that are properly bonded with their parents are less likely to have certain things adversely, right? So if you take a child that was removed from bonding with their parent, there's an increased chance that they can become a sociopath. We know that for anyone who studies mental health. I could pull my book out right now and show you it's on the first chapter. When you do child
Mm.
development, then you go to like nursing or take those types of classes. Now, the other thing is that it started before then because babies start imprinting on you in the womb. They know your voice, they know your smell, they know you. That started beforehand. So that's what they're looking for in regards to transitioning into this world is what gives them comfort. Babies mirror and do the things that you do while you're pregnant. So environment matters. Babies are learning in the womb, and tolerance and personality and all those types of things. Overall health is influenced by that. How much stress you're under directly affects the baby as well as the entire home, right? So we're talking development. When we are talking about the basics of having children, we are talking about the ability to cope, and more importantly, for women and those that are going to be birthing people and have that relationship, understand that that bonding, that oxytocin is released only when a man loves you.
Mm.
Otherwise, they don't bond with you. And then you wonder why some men have a hard time bonding with their children. They have to have a love for you. They also do that love allows for a level of protection and connection to the children. When they don't, then they don't properly bond with the children because they're not bonded to the mother or the birthing person. So then you fast forward and realize in the womb, children are developing. When you play music, particularly classical music, those children tend to have higher IQs and be smarter when you play it to your belly. So the activity is all happening before the child is born, and then their transition is dependent upon it. This is what we call physiological. It is the natural world made logical in order to understand how the body works. When you're having a child, there are a number of things that you are not considering because you don't realize it directly relates back to their health, and your entire household. But
Right.
these things will determine how your children develop. And I don't want people to be mistaken by grace and say, hey, I didn't do everything perfectly and my child is going to end up in a terrible way. What we're trying to
Mm-mm.
do is actually reduce adverse interactions.
Yeah.
Because when you're bonded to your children, you typically want the very best for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to tell you how you get the very best for them with things that don't necessarily cost you anything. This is just how you do it. You didn't have to go out and buy a toy. It didn't cost you a dime. It just cost you your time and your effort. And it's
And
not
I think, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So what I'll tell you, what I'm trying to teach people is that there is a way about life that makes life a little bit easier, even though it's hard temporarily. The temporary difficult is not for life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the temporary that makes the hard possible. It helps you to get over what is hard for you.
Yeah.
And it's very short term, but if you don't have anything there, you don't have a support system like doulas and providers that are actually taking care of you and helping you get through the moments. I can tell you all the science. The moment is what matters. In the moment,
Yeah.
how did someone help you? I'm tired. I don't want to right now. I've had enough. How do I get through it? I don't
Yeah.
feel like it because we're constantly being told that these experiences are supposed to be adverse. The reality is that the experiences are happening because they were done from an observational perspective and not from the care providers that used to take care of women for longer generations than what we have in our modern system. And those care providers were not seen as important or necessary because all they could see is what was in front of them and not the entire process. It was the thing
This,
they weren't
go
measuring.
ahead. This is so important. I think, well, I know, especially as we talk about some of the impacts that Medicaid and just some of the tax cuts that are coming, because they're coming, and what the
They're here.
implications are.
Mhm.
And although we won't get into it now, we are going to be back next week talking, going a little bit deeper, because it's not like it's a one and done where you can cover this topic and you have all of the information. Like you
No.
said at the onset of this, there are layers and you have to start at one point and then build from there.
So let me do this before we go. All right, we're gonna
Mhm.
do a little exercise, y'all. I believe in making the physiological logical, okay? We're gonna make it easy. We just talked a whole lot of things and a whole lot of variables and a whole lot of ways it can go and all of this and all of that. I'm gonna make it easy for you. You have to eat well. You have to sleep well. You have to rest well. You have to live well. What does that mean? When you get up in the morning, you give yourself the best possible chance for the best possible outcomes. Get some sunlight, get some food that nourishes you. Stop eating that stuff that's going to make you sick and hurt your stomach. Don't eat it. You're just going to be in the bathroom. Okay? Hold your babies. Hold your babies. Everything in you told you to hold the baby. Hold your babies. Okay? Plan on ways where you are doing this while understanding that this person and you are together. What you're doing, they're learning. It is that simple. What you're doing, they're learning. You can't, you ever try to tell a kid to not do something and they watched you do it? They remind you almost immediately.
But you
Make
did it.
it's that simple. Eat, rest, and do what the body is telling you to do. You'll get there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Toni, for sharing this part of it. Again, we'll be back next week, um, and we'll take a little bit deeper dive. So, thank you again, and we will have this on different social media platforms so people can tune into it. So, we're going to end at this point, and we won't have these technical difficulties next time. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.